On the corporate finance side, finance is actually, when it comes in many cases for the right reasons, been a blocker to new revenue streams and revenue growth. And the reason for that is product and the CEO and the go-to-market side is like, hey, if I could make this a service offering or a usage offering or a different way we think about how we sell products or more products and drive more revenue, the finance side has said, hey, whoa. If I have to do this manually, or if I have to try to get this new order or contract object or product to fit within my billing system or my revenue accounting system or RevRec system or ERP, I just can't do it. And therefore, we're more just please asking you not to do it. Whereas when you adapt tools like Tabs, finance has to guide on what's good business from a margin profile, et cetera. But that malleability and flexibility unlocks so many new revenue opportunities where finance, back to being that strategic role, says, hey, if it's good business, we got it.
Hey everyone, I'm Alex from Air CFO and welcome to Funded. Today, we are sitting down with Ali Hussain, co-founder and CEO of Tabs, fresh on the heels of their $55 million Series B funding round led by Lightspeed Partners. Here's why I'm excited about Tabs. The back office tech stack has come a long way over the 10 years we've been building Air CFO. Tools like Ramp, Rippling, Mercury, these are light years ahead of the tools that startups ran in the mid 2010s. However, there's still one gaping gap in the startup back office tech stack, and that is B2B invoicing. Invoicing, collections, revenue reconciliation, these are components of the day-to-day for accountants, which make them tear their hair out. And until very recently, it was near impossible to automate the nearly endless spectrum of different types of invoices that may come through a customer's CRM to invoice and collect on those contracts automatically. But with the advent of LLMs, this is now possible. And Tabs is leading the charge in creating a fully automated quote to collect process for some of the fastest growing startups on the planet. In this conversation, we talk about the founding story of Tabs, how Ali and his team spent their first 3 months having 8 calls a day with customers to learn the ins and outs of the revenue accounting landscape and have deep empathy for their customers' pain points. We also discuss the new AI agents that Tabs also announced this week alongside their fundraise, their agents for billing and collections. Ali has done a lot of deep thinking about the process for building production-ready AI agents, and he walked me through the 4-step process that is necessary for a company that wants to build agents that work in real life, especially in a space with a low margin for error, such as the finance space. I also really enjoyed our exploration of the future of finance and finance teams in an age of AI. Ali argues that we're not heading for 0-person finance organizations, and that finance teams of the future will be able to add significantly more value for the companies they support as a result of the superpowers that AI is going to grant them. Finally, Ali shared some hard-won tactical fundraising advice accumulated over his last 3 years building Tabs, as well as his previous experiences at some of the world's fastest growing startups. I really enjoyed getting to learn about the future of finance from Ali. Please enjoy my conversation with Ali Hussain from Tabs. Ali, welcome to Funded. Really excited to have you on today.
Absolutely, Alex. I'm a follower of this show, and I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right. You have had quite the week. Yesterday, you made some waves on LinkedIn with the announcement of your $55 million Series B funding round. I am so looking forward to diving in and going behind the scenes on how that round came together and hopefully, give some great advice to founders who are looking to follow in your footsteps someday, raise their own Series B funding round. But to start, I think it'd be really helpful as context for the folks listening in and for others who may not have heard about Tabs. Give us a rundown on what Tabs is and the founding story behind the platform, which I actually think is very interesting as well. So yeah, take it away.
100%. Tabs is revenue automation and agents for finance, and we'll get plenty of time to talk about what that is specifically. Ultimately, we believe that finance around their ERP has three core operational workflows. They have everything related to vendor, AP, spend, procurement, everything tied to employee, payroll, benefits, and everything tied to customer, which we would describe as revenue. And our founding story goes back to this belief that a lot of those operational parts of finance have made significant progress in the last 5 or 8 years. When you think about AP and spend, immediately there's a name like Ramp or Zip or others that come to mind. Payroll and benefits are the same way. You can think of a Rippling all the way up to a Workday. But if I were to ask the same thing around revenue, whether it's your billing, your collections, your RevRec, I think most viewers or listeners, and certainly CFOs, controllers, and operators would pause and be like, it's actually kind of painful and it's not a great experience. And so a lot of our story came from being a team of operators who had operated in ERP systems, were early adopters of phenomenal products, whether it was Gusto, Rippling, or Ramp, or Navan, and others. And we're like, why is it still so painful on the flow of funds in? And the conclusion was that it's just a really hard problem to tackle. Most companies have very different commercial models, different ways they write contracts, do discounts. They change their products quite often. And pre-AI, it was actually just impossible to automate the data ingest and be able to create a modern horizontal platform around revenue. And so our founding story, we were founded in early 2023, 6 months or so after GPT launched. And we started to see some light at the end of the tunnel that some of the technological means to actually solve revenue were coming in line of sight. And so we were lucky to get backed and put together a really smart team to go heads down for a year and a half to kind of reimagine the revenue stack.
Yeah, I love that story. And it rhymes with the founding stories of several other founders I've talked to building back office tech products who have been operators themselves in prior lives and were almost like compelled to build a product in this space because they had such a poor experience with the back office tools that they were operating on with their previous startups. So I think that is a big contributing factor to the renaissance that we're seeing in the back office space today. But overall, the back office tech space really feels like it's having a moment with
Yeah.
y'all recently announcing your funding round. We've had big announcements from the teams at Rillet and before them Ramp, and then even just today, Aleph announced their Series A. I'd be interested to hear what you think are some of the other main factors that are contributing to the back office tech space kind of getting its moment in the spotlight.
Yeah. I think it's there's a historical answer and then there's kind of like a why now answer. The historical answer is really interesting. If you actually look at the overall TAM and amount of technology bought, kind of the back office, as you would describe it, or just the broader finance suite or everything tied to the ERP, is one of the largest enterprise spend buckets in all of technology. Like if you look at how much dollars are put in Oracle, NetSuite, Intuit products, payment products, like we're talking hundreds of billions of dollars a year. And so I think it doesn't surprise me. Some of the builders, like the partners, all three that we partner with, like we're all going after massive markets and trying to build generational companies. And so I think for us, wanting to go after a very large TAM in an area that has historically actually spent a lot of money on technology, it's the least sexy. No one gets up and talks about NetSuite. They do like their AWS or their Databricks, but like there's a ton of capital that's spent on these ERP systems. And so that's the historical context. It's just the size of the TAM. I think the second, there's a unique moment, and I think a lot of the names you mentioned, especially the AI natives like LF or a Rillet or a Tabs, we've been really building in the post LLM world and the AI world. And we've been fortunate where in some ways we got a head start where we started to build and learn in 2023 and 2024. But the current context of why now, Alex, is like the buyer has changed a lot in the last 12 months. Last year, if I was pitching tabs, they'd be like, yeah, this is really interesting, but why would I want my data in an LLM? Or I have a fantastic team already. I'm not sure I need AI automation or efficiency. And there's something that kind of turned in terms of moment, I'd say, going into 2025, where I think the CFO or the finance leader realized that AI is actually going to be something we must lean into, much because their own boards, their CEOs were saying, we need you to do more with less. The second is they're also just becoming stewards of AI within their organization. They're telling their engineering team to use something like Cursor, or their customer support or success team to use something like Sierra AI. And I think they're saying, hey, I now have to be a good steward internally and also demonstrating I'm doing more with less and investing in technology and AI. And I think that's the second reason on why I think the market is starting to really get started. But I don't think this is like a trend. I think it is now a part of the inevitable future.
Yeah, that's a really good point about the evolution of the mindset for finance and accounting professionals. And I mean, I think part of the reason for that evolution is based on the fact that companies like Tabs have built their products with deep empathy for the problems that finance and accounting folks are actually facing in their day to day. I listened to your conversation with Sasha from Puzzle, another great company, as prep for this, and you talked about how you spent 3+ months without building product, just back to back conversations with folks who would ultimately end up being your customers, and really got that deep appreciation for the product that would best serve the needs of the finance and accounting professionals with who will ultimately be using tabs. My question for you is, how do you think that the role of the CFO or finance leader will shift in the next, say, 2 to 5 years, pick your time scale, as more of these AI native finance tools in like come online and become more widely used within finance teams?
Yeah, I think there's and thank you, Alex, for listening to that interview. If you remember at the very end, I say, what's your hot take? And I'm like, the CFO or the finance team has actually arrived. They're not going anywhere. And I am of the belief that the CFO and in some cases even the controller is more important now than ever. But to your point, the role is going to be a lot more strategic. Like they're going to spend more time doing more strategic thinking, cross-functional collaboration, thinking through how do we drive more revenue and do parts of like the really interesting parts of their roles. I think the parts, Alex, that are going to shift away are like the tactical day-to-day things like building an invoice and following up for an invoice or checking their bank account for a payment and reconciliation or doing a ton of manual cash forecasting or concerned if they have the right talent to do revenue recognition. These are the parts where I think new age tools like ours and where we are headed will provide significant kind of relief for these teams. So that's like the biggest, like, my take is like, I'm not someone who's pushing for the 0-person finance team. I think that would be deeply problematic for most organizations. I think the second is, Alex, I think there's going to be new roles in finance we haven't even thought of before. There's a company we look up to a lot in the sales stack called Clay. And Clay's not out there and saying, oh, there's going to be no RevOps team or no sales team. Clay's saying, hey, a lot of these teams are just going to have to evolve because they're going to get so much richer context from AI, or they're going to get so much new types of automation. And I think in some ways, sales is a little bit ahead of finance. They've been recipients of tools maybe 6 to 12 months earlier. But what Clay tells a lot of their best customers to do is hire a sales engineer. And within sales now, you have a sales engineer. We have one at Tabs, and they're able to administer AI tools like a Clay or a Gong or a Rocks or whatever it may be in a lot more modern way. And I think finance is going to be very similar. Like if you have a AI native ERP, a Tabs agent, ramp agent, like the role has shifted. You're no longer using tools and software to do your job better. You're orchestrating AI and agents in a way. And I'm not sure that's going to be the exact CFO role. That may be a role within finance, which is still going to be able to do things with much higher impact. But I think there's still going to be very thoughtful, strategic people within finance to do that work. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's such a big gap between kind of like the idyllic vision of what a finance professional could contribute to an organization around helping the team operate more effectively, helping them stick to their operating plan, helping them allocate resources strategically, and what they actually end up doing in their day to day, which is moving a bunch of data around in spreadsheets and making sure that everything is tying out and manually keying journal entries into QuickBooks Online. And yeah, we talk about this upcoming evolution quite a bit at Air CFO, and we took some inspiration from Clay. It's funny that you
Yeah.
brought them up. They created this new role, this go-to-market engineer, and we are sketching out a job description for something similar at Air CFO, which we're calling a business performance architect archetype. And so you could think of the three words that that role encompasses. Architect is setting up the systems, configuring them, making sure they're running effectively. Business is sort of the business intel, taking the information that comes out of those systems and helping the leadership to make sense of them. And then performance is really that collaboration across teams and helping each leader within different departments of the organization understand how their individual team contributes to the overall success of the company, and making sure that each of the individual departments are like dialing in their own performance to just set the company's overall trajectory down the right path. So that's the future that we're shooting for at Air CFO. I don't think that we're moving towards
I think you nailed it,
zero
Alex.
person.
I think you absolutely nailed it. That is the future. Depending on org and what they must do, they may have someone just focused on go to market. For Air CFO and for Tabs, and maybe you have a broader generalist that focuses on sales and finance and maybe marketing and maybe legal and a couple other functions. But the job's never going to be like a Salesforce admin again, or a Zora or Stripe admin or a NetSuite admin. They're going to be orchestrating these new tools versus figuring out how to get caught up in API nuances or custom fields and building out hyper tool like specialized objects. We think that world is drastically shifting away. And I'm happy to hear you guys are doing the same thing within your organization.
Yeah. It's been really interesting having these conversations with different folks across the back office tech stack, and I think it's really exciting that with all of the change happening right now, companies like Air CFO and Tabs and others are able to sort of like steer the direction of the way that back office functions run, and hopefully point us towards like a better future where finance professionals are valued more and used more strategically than they are today. I would love to get into the details around your Series B, which is ultimately what we're here to talk about. But before we get to that, I actually, by chance, happened to have a conversation the other day with Tabs's fractional CFO, Philip, right?
Great.
Um,
Yeah.
and I wish I could say that I did this as part of like a deep diligence and prep for this call, but I just happened to connect with Philip through the Operators Guild. And we were talking about tools that we want our teams to run on. And he mentioned Tabs. And then he brought up that he's been working with y'all. And so I'm curious to hear, for Tabs, the company, you're obviously leveraging your own software pretty extensively. And I think that's potentially a peek into the future of how finance teams are going to run when these tools proliferate. So, could you talk a little bit about how Tabs's finance function works and the role that Philip plays and that other operational individuals, the role that they play in keeping Tabs running effectively?
Yeah, 100%. I think it is a great purview into where I think the future is headed. Like in any classical form, Tabs would have likely had to have a in-person finance team. Call it 6, 9 months ago, we had raised a large Series A late last year. We were hitting like a really exciting revenue threshold. We had gotten to 50 plus employees. We had major like financial operations. In most cases, pre AI and best of breed in technology, that would have been the case. Now, both, and we're lucky, we get to talk to all these amazing companies, including many of which are customers, which are the fastest growing AI companies in the world. And we're seeing many of them at 100, 200, even half a billion in revenue have a one person finance team because they have tools like Tabs and Ramp and others, or they're still relying on fractional support that is either kind of a client advisory service that handles a lot of the core accounting and strategy work, which was a big part of how we operate. And then when there's a unique part of where they need specialized, still human help, in our case, FP&A, I mean, Philip's a humble guy, but like he led FP&A at UiPath as they went public, like incredibly experienced. Like as a Series A, Series B company, we're not getting yet a Philip to be our CFO, but we're able to lean on the humanistic components of our advisory firm uh, and Philip, but we're able to get the quality and maintain that because a lot of our more tactical things are automated with software. I don't know if Phil mentioned this, but like all of our revenue, particularly the tactical parts, billing, collections, non-GAAP, are handled by me. I, as CEO, I remember many years I watched Parker Conrad dog food rippling for many years. I mean, I think he does it till this day, even though they're close to thousands of employees. I still run our revenue. Like all the contracts come in after a deal is closed, one, Tabs automatically generates an invoice, sends it. And all of that's possible because I think this is the future. Like I'm kind of that agent admin or that finance engineer. And then we have the strategic parts coming from an advisory firm and someone like a Phil.
That I think that's really cool that you're dog fooding your own platform and continuing to send out invoices. I'm sure that it gives you a great appreciation for just little rough edges on the platform that need to be sanded off, or interactions with the agent. Can you talk a little bit about? I'm sorry, I just keep finding all these different rabbit holes to go down before we actually get to talk about the funding round. But can you talk about what those interactions with the Tabs agent actually look like for a finance professional in their day to day?
Yeah, and it's a great, I mean, it'll be a good segue into the funding round too. The the thing about, and as you call it, like back office solutions or AI native solutions, regardless if it's finance, sales, but I actually think it's very relevant for finance, is Alex, you still have to do a lot of core hard work technology building. Our framework for technology is you have to build a data moat, which is a big part of our AI native piece, which is contracts, usage, key sales data like customer name, information can just flow in, and our AI can ingest it and organize it. That is a wedge, but you need a data wedge as you build these technologies. The second is you still have to build the hard operational software that a ZERP era SaaS company needed to build, because finance will not just jump straight to agent. There's a lot of trust you have to build. There always needs to be the ability for the human to drive the steering wheel, but also from an audit and control standpoint, you're not going to go audit an agent, you're going to audit their work. And so the way I interact, I have my data mode where Tabs is connected to my CRM, which in our case it's HubSpot. If we had a usage component, it could connect to our Snowflake or our Looker. I then have my operational Tabs software, which in Tabs, I can, like the way I would in any other SaaS product, run billing, run collections, run cash app, look at rev rec, adjusting, see reporting. We still think this is fundamental to the finance stack. And so anyone who's jumping straight from data mode to agent, neither is the technology ready for that, but the customer is not ready for that. And so we've built a bunch of tooling which a human can work on, which I do as the dog fooder, but an agent can today or in the future also show their work so that a human and an agent can always watch each other or approve each other, or it's always optimal. And then the last mile is the agents, which are a big part of our Series B, that can work on our operational software, but have unique context that they would not get in a SaaS product, which otherwise would require a human to look at. And so a great example is most billing software is built off of custom fields running from a CRM. But when an escalation happens, like, hey, customer refutes the price or the renewal, etc., you're blocked. A human has to go read the contract, look for the terms, go back and forth with the customer. But the way our agents work is they can come in, they can see what tabs understood around the contract, they can go back and forth with the customer. But if there's a unique escalation or data need that's not sitting in our system of record, they can go query the contract and say, you know what? There was a cancellation clause, or there was an escalator on the price, and therefore I should be applying 6% versus the 10% I put on the invoice that was negotiated. That's my mistake. That is the way these systems going forward are going to be having to be architected. I'm sorry I'm going on a little ramble here. People, I don't like, and it's really important because there's going to be a lot of noise in the next couple months and quarters for your firm and your friends in the space or your listeners. And I think this is why, as folks are looking at vendors, understanding how the overall technology works and very explicitly understanding what's the quality of team talent, how are they talking about agents? And for us and how I use my agents, the agent is my coworker that is still working on all of this tabs as infrastructure. And for me, handling a lot of the things related to billing today that otherwise is so tactical and so laborious and time consuming that I can now defer to a tabs agent.
Yeah, I think the framework that you've laid out around the steps that need to be taken in order to build an effective AI product today, especially in the finance space, makes so much sense. And yeah, we have seen many agentic companies come out that seem to be skipping a couple of the prerequisite steps and just going straight to agents, which I think, maybe you can put together a prototype that works in that context. But when you actually try to push it into like a real company environment, is probably not going to work super well. So yeah, I appreciate the like systematic approach that you've taken, and clearly it's working for y'all. So yeah, I think that is a great segue into talking about your Series B. It was a little under a year ago that you raised your, I think, $25 million Series A round. And as I understand, the Series B came a little bit ahead of schedule for Tab. So could you talk just a little bit about what has happened between your Series A and your Series B, how your story may have shifted, and how you decided to pull the trigger on taking money for your Series B a little bit ahead of schedule?
Yeah, 100%, Alex. I think one of the things we've been fortunate from the beginning is to be able to have a strong balance sheet to be able to invest in the R&D to do exactly what I talked about, is do all of the hard accounting work, data work, system of record work, and be able to do the agent work. And there are real R&D dollars and costs that go into building that. And we've invested in that from the beginning, even before the A, we had done almost a $10 million seed. And why I say that, it's less about the dollars, but it's more like putting in the care of R&D to get to a point where we can take a really exciting product to market that looks and feels completely different than what anyone's been able to do, whether on the ERP side with a NetSuite or a Sage, or on the billing, RevRec side with many, many players in the space. And I think what happened between the A and the B is we started to see an inflection point in our product where the 30 to 40 engineers we had with us here in New York were starting to get to a point of beyond catching up on fundamental software, starting to completely push the puck on where the future's headed. And what that resulted in is a sales velocity that was coupled with a ton of macro changes in how our buyer was buying that allowed us to not only grow much faster than we would have anticipated, but also get to work with much more upmarket clients that can really see the ROI of something like Tabs. And so that's a little bit of the macro factor is like, I think just much earlier commercial traction coupled with a feeling of, wow, like the product's really working and we're humming in our velocity ultimately started to give me high conviction that I could do more with more. And as a result, and we almost had, I think, all of our Series A still left, just given kind of we run our own collections and revenue, so I'm very efficient there. We just realized, hey, we have an opportunity to just go win this market right now in a way that I think the next 12 months create a unique position to go do. And what was important to me was just the time. I'm so heads down right now with my team, with the customer, bringing on and training some amazing folks on the go-to-market side, on the solution side, on the engineering side. And we have built just a fantastic relationship with our existing investors. And we saw particularly Lightspeed becoming maybe the preeminent AI investor, particularly after the deep position they had taken on in research labs like Anthropic, where Claude is a really important partner for the next phase. And so technological capability of what we were seeing from solutions like Claude and also the need in the space in our own investments and agents made it really exciting to just be able to go to our existing investors and say, hey, Lightspeed, we just want to be heads down right now. Would you be excited to support us again? And it became a no-brainer.
Yeah, Lightspeed has made some fantastic investments in the AI space over the last few years. I love the shout out for Anthropic, actually a former Air CFO client, one of our favorite logos that
Oh,
we get
hey,
to
let's
put
go.
into our
Oh,
slide deck. Yeah, it's a funny story how we came to work with Daniela and Dario and the team over there. Maybe I can tell you in person next week, but
I can't wait. That's a
um,
amazing story.
yeah, we lost the deal for OpenAI, but it ended up leading to us working with Anthropic for the first 24 months or so of their startup journey, and it's crazy to see how far they've come. So it sounds like through the stars aligning in a combination of just market timing and commercial traction and product velocity led to you being able to have a pretty wide pick of like which investors you teamed up for this next phase of Tabs' growth. How did you go about assessing which, aside from the track record, which is obviously a big factor, but maybe through conversations that you had with investors, like what can founders take away around determining founder investor fit within the fundraise process?
Yeah. I think putting aside the AI piece, which was like important to us as a vertical AI company, I think there's a couple other things. The partner there, Justin, I got to know at the seed. He comes from the domain. He was at Stripe for many years, leads Lightspeed's fintech practice. So broadly just had domain knowledge around the problem in this space. And I think some founders sometimes can take that for granted. It's like, oh, they cover all enterprise SaaS or vertical AI. But I think getting to then work with the second piece, which is not only am I deeply with my partnership thinking about AI, I actually know this domain incredibly well. And I can be a great thought partner to you. I think that's incredibly important. Um, and the third, and look, we're a very New York in-person company. All of our engineers are here, our product team's here. Justin happens to also be in New York. That makes things easy when I need to go for a walk with him or touch in on a subject. Like there are things that, I mean, and our GC partner Alex Franz in San Francisco. So I try to balance the best of both worlds. But that certainly is also helpful as we're heading this next phase, and there's going to be new types of operational questions and opportunities where I can really get that from my board.
Yeah, that is, I think it's an underrated benefit of being able to meet with your partner in person. And I know that you got a strong in-person culture there in NYC. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. Was there a specific milestone that you hit where you started thinking about going out to raise your Series B, or how do you think about the key metrics that you're tracking at Tabs that determine your fundraise readiness?
Yeah, I think there's always like baseline milestones. Like I want to get to a certain level of revenue or KPIs or product market fit. I think those are fundamental, and like doing things unnatural before those have been met are always can often be challenging. We had kind of hit all of the baselines there on, all right, we're in Series B territory. The then question becomes, which was more in our case, like for some, it's like, hey, I need capital in a certain amount of time. For me, it was more about, can I do more with more? Like if I were to take on more capital than because I'm not up against 6 months of runway or a year of runway, what could I do with that? And for me, it was all about where can I go into offense? And I think there's two areas where I felt uniquely at this time we can go into offense. One is deep AI thinking. Again, back to your point earlier on like agents, like we are building R&D in like the hard parts of software here, but there's some really hard R&D that needs to go into AI and ML thinking. I think there's of all the companies in the back office, there's a very small subset that have actually been able to garner the resources and the talent to build out truly like agentic technologies. This is not just a wrapper on Claude or LangChain. Like accuracy rates in finance have to be significantly high, and your own technical staff that can actually figure out these theoretical problems as well as operational problems are both, they often don't join pre-seed companies, or if they are, they're going to start them. And so being able to be a Series B company that could have the balance sheet to bring on that type of talent was really important. The second is go to market. Like we kind of exited like just founder led sales at the beginning of the year, and we're finding a repeatable motion, which I think is fundamental, that could drive marketing and sales without a ton of like founder handholding. And I think in Q1 and Q2, I saw 80% of our deals happen that without me originating them, or like I want to be with as many customers as possible. But that natural growth where you can be like, hey, I can now actually really double down on my go to market engine and build out really robust enablement, sales, go to market engineering, demand gen to like set us up for the next scale. That became an inflection point where I was like, I'd love to. I was getting the signals where we were ready to be a Series B company.
Yeah. So talking about agents, along with your Series B announcement this week, you also put out a video talking about two new agents that you are going to be rolling out for your customers, your billing agent and your collections agent. I'm curious, with this additional capital that you have, what are some of the other agents that you have on your roadmap for 2025, 2026, and how do you think about the team of agents that Tabs will ultimately be able to arm their customers with?
Yeah, I'll start by saying I think on Agentia, we're all very open minded right now. Like we're all like AI and a lot of the technologies there are moving faster than Moore's law, and we're building in parallel. But let me kind of give you purview into like my first principle thinking here. At the end of the day, what's unique about an agent versus AI native software is that technology before, even AI technology, was about how do we make this experience faster or more efficient or um, a better experience or more insightful. Where agentia or agents go is it starts to give a CFO or a controller or a company the ability to completely defer a role to AI. And that's how I think about what an agent is. And so, why we think Tabs has one of the most unique opportunities in all of finance is because as finance scales, there are two jobs that do not scale uh, with any efficiency often as a company scales. It is a billing and AR like clerk, and it is a revenue account, meaning if you look at most companies that are 100 million in revenue, their finance staff is roughly around 15 to 20 people. 60 to 70% are sitting in accounting. And most of those roles, we would argue 50+% are doing either AR and billing, which benchmarks 4-to-1 to AP and spend, or revenue accounting, which is as revenue scales, you have more controls, you have more auditability, you have new rules you have to administer, and you just keep hiring more human capital. And so when you think about where we want to take agents, we want to deploy agents in where we think there is the most constraint in terms of growing without adding a bunch of headcount. There's nothing, in some cases, there's nothing wrong with headcount. Certain companies may have the margin profile to support that. It's just the people who do this work do not want to be chasing down collections or reading contracts to make sure if they're 606 compliant on a spreadsheet. And so we're really going over the most tactical, mindless, not fun part so that the amazing CPAs and accountants we have can do more strategic work and defer the really tactical data exercises of maintenance and orchestration to a Tabs agent. And so that is kind of the principle we're driving our roadmap. We think it is like a deeply exciting one for all of finance and where we think a lot of the most human capital inefficiencies sit holistically in the office of the CFO.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. I definitely see some massive efficiencies to be gained, especially at larger scale organizations. Um, yeah, the fact that a company might have 15 revenue accountants on staff just chasing down payments and recording transactions inside of their ERP sounds super suboptimal. One thing I've been thinking about recently, and sorry, this is a bit of like a deep cut thought, but I've been thinking about areas within the finance stack where drastically lowering the cost of performing a task will lead to a dramatic increase in like the volume of that task that actually gets done. You know, people talk about like Jevons paradox, and I'm trying to figure out where Jevons paradox might show itself in the finance function. Um, do you think that there is any, do you see any immediate opportunities for Tabs having that revenue system of record to actually be able to like drive additional value for finance teams with AI agents, or is it mainly an efficiency play in the short term, and then that's the longer term vision is to be able to like do some of the more like value additive things?
Yeah, huge value right out of the gate. And I put in two buckets depending on the persona. I think for the advisory side, a lot of the CPA firms, the CAS practices, revenue historically has been a workflow they don't even want to touch because they come in, they do bookkeeping, they do some FP&A work, they might even do AP and payroll. The data across revenue and the workflows are so messy, they don't even want to touch that work. So immediately it creates a new service and advisory opportunity on the firm side. At the company level, on the corporate finance side, finance is actually, when it comes in many cases for the right reasons, been a blocker to new revenue streams and revenue growth. And the reason for that is product and the CEO and the go-to-market side is like, hey, if I could make this a service offering or a usage offering or a different way we think about how we sell products or more products and drive more revenue, the finance side has said, hey, whoa, like if I have to do this manually or if I have to try to get this new order or contract object or product to fit within my billing system or my revenue accounting system or RevRec system or ERP, I just can't do it. And therefore, we're more just please asking you not to do it. Whereas when you adapt tools like Tabs, finance has to guide on what's good business from a margin profile, et cetera. But that malleability and flexibility unlocks so many new revenue opportunities where finance, back to being that strategic role, says, hey, if it's good business, we got it. Tabs, Tabs agents, Tabs revenue recognition, the way they feed that back to my GL are fully flexible to support the growth I want to help drive as your business partner within the organization.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point around the operational impacts of shifting a pricing structure and how that can be a limiter of company growth and in general can make finance teams' lives miserable if the company does decide to push forward with introducing a new uh, pricing model, for example.
100%. And pricing's a big one. Alex, we see it's the contract too. It's like finance often says, look, if you put in this unique term in the contract or add this new product or this new escalator, we're never going to be able to remember it. Like, I don't have time. I'm a two-person finance team. How am I going to know that there's a tier-based model in this contract that you want to try to drive up to get more revenue? And Tabs administers all of that. You can just kind of let the process run it. And so it's pricing plus in many ways that can really unlock a ton of value between finance and the rest of the organization.
Carrying that forward a couple of years, how do you see pricing strategies evolving for startups as a result of AI being delivered to customers, but also as a result of finance teams being armed with that additional flexibility that AI provides? Like maybe buy and sell like different pricing strategies. What should my team be thinking about? What types of pricing approaches are our clients going to be running on over the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think I think it's going to be very complicated. I'll start by saying that the way we know about flat pricing or standard pricing or simple like time-based pricing, I think is going to shift substantially. That said, I think it's going to create opportunities because it's going to be very value based, whether it's based on outcomes or usage or tiers or agent hours. Like, I think there's going to be a lot of unknowns, but the organizations, the finance teams, the product teams that adapt to this model, it's not going to happen overnight. There's a lot of challenges to just do this in a all or nothing zero sum way. But what we are seeing is that it's no longer like the snowflakes of the world and the open AIs of the world and the Twilios that are usage based. And it's not just AI companies like Cursor and others. Like, every company is going to be an AI company, whether you're a professional service organization, a manufacturing firm, or a consumer goods company. And so my prediction is that these new forms of usage, the orgs that are best at being thoughtful and strategic on how to deploy them commercially, but then have tools like a Tabs to administer that uncertainty and complication to get ahead, to learn, and then really move on offense are going to be the winners in this space.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Um, One of the framings that I've been using to kind of think through how all this stuff is going to shift is like we are closing the gap between a software platform's ability to make a claim about the ROI of their platform and actually being able to deliver like an outcome for a business.
Yeah.
So I think like all companies in the future are essentially going to be selling outcomes. And but if you think about 10 different types of businesses, they're going to be selling 10 different types of outcomes, which would be impossible to encode into software at scale previously. But tools like Tabs potentially, could enable that. And I think that's a really interesting future to think about going forward. Um,
And I think some people, I think a lot of people are going to price on outcomes too, Alex. Like the ones who are most confident in their product and their usage and their inevitability may price on outcomes. I also think, and you brought up earlier, interesting question earlier, like I've never, as a technology seller, liked time savings as a selling point. It's always been around other forms of ROI, especially growth and revenue. But I think in the world of agents, some time savings or human capital savings outcomes are going to be okay. And I think like it's a different shift in paradigm because with SaaS, you still have the like you couldn't believe the human capital outcomes because you still have human capital. But in a world where that's truly getting rethought through with agents, I think we're going to see new types of value creation for the best vendors in the space.
yeah, that's super interesting. Um, Give me a lot to think about within this conversation. All right, we're coming up on time here. I have just a couple more questions for you around fundraising and advice that you would give to a founder who is gearing up for their own funding round. What's the most common unforced error that you see founders making when they are going out to raise a round of funding?
For advice for other founders, I'll give some tactical pieces and some big picture advice. I'll start with the big picture. I think though as a founder, your job is to fundraise and capitalize the business. I think you have to be incredibly thoughtful about when and how. And mostly you should be focusing on your customer and building great products. And so when you think about fundraising, don't think about it as rolling admissions. You should basically dedicate most of your time to running your company. But when you know you're going to fundraise, run a process and do it very well over a finite period of time versus like open it. And so I think this is really true up until from the pre-seed to the B. What you don't want to be doing is just like running around Silicon Valley in New York and just meeting people and showing them decks and all of that. It's not a good use of your time, but you're also not presenting your best foot forward in terms of the impeccable, like the remarkable business you're doing. So that's the big picture. I think tactically, some of the things that are really important. One is research and really know who the best, like who the firms are that you actually want to go to. You will need, like, there's nothing wrong with many. It should not be three. It should be a decent amount. It doesn't mean you go through all of them at once, but I think it's really important to run the process and know who you're talking to. Second is get intros from founders. The best investors do not want to hear from another investor or get a DM. They're so busy. But when another compelling founder you respect introduces you, like that is a big deal. And so use other founders to talk to the best investors. And the third is like really polish up your story and quality of delivery. Like it is amazing. Like founders will just like spend no time on a little bit of light product design to make the deck clear and less verbose and steps up to like the story and the brand they want to build. And I think that's really important. And then the last really tactical one is never just send a deck in PDF via email. Like use things like DocSend, keep things clean, demonstrate that what you are building is very valuable and they can definitely look at it, but you're not spraying and sharing this across broadly. And you're really focused on a more direct relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are all really great bits of advice. Is there a single lesson that was hardest won for you over the last three funding rounds that you've led in building Tabs that you wish you had known and might have been able to save yourself a little bit of headache if you had known at the beginning of your journey here?
Yeah, I think like when you do run that process, like run it in parallel. Like you want to be able to talk to as many firms and make sure you get to quality assess everyone. And I think like there have been times where I kind of get a couple of firms have like a head start and you don't get to like get the time and space to really run your process. And so even when you're time bounding it, do it in a way where you can talk to multiple firms in the world where several lean in so that you can follow through with your process. I think after my very first time, I realized how important in person is. And like, I just dedicate the time. That may mean I have to go out to the Bay Area and spend 9 days and spend a weekend there and take meetings late into Friday night and go back and forth between Palo Alto, Menlo Park, and the city. But like, if you get that privilege, like, go do it. You're going to learn a lot about the firm, the folks, etc. And I highly encourage.
Two great points there. Yeah, one around the tactical approach for compressing the round into as short of a period as possible and having those conversations at the same stage in parallel. And then number two, yeah, the power of in person. I think we're seeing a major resurgence of people realizing that it is so important to get to know your partners, your customers, your other players in the space on a personal level and not just through Google Meet, which is why I'm really excited to meet you in person next week when you're here in the Bay Area. So, are there any resources? Sorry, just to wrap things up here, I want to be respectful of your time. Are there any resources, whether it be a book or an essay or a VC who's putting out content that you would say is like the one resource that you would recommend to a founder who is trying to most effectively run their funding round process?
I actually think it's like, you'd be surprised, like, how much other founders want to help other founders. And I mean, there's no doubt great resources. One of our early stage investors, Primary Ventures, has some of the best content and ways to engage, especially whether it's a first time founder or folks in their earlier financing journey. But Alex, I think like, and it doesn't mean if you DM one person, they're going to respond to you. But like, when I was early, I would reach out to founders I looked up to. And I said, look, I know you're incredibly busy and I have nothing to offer you. So I'm not coming in here but I actually de-escalate a little bit. They knew I wasn't coming in here to try to sell them my product right away or do anything. I'm just like, hey, I deeply appreciate and respect what you've built. And if you could spare 15 minutes to just understand my situation, give me some amazing advice, I would deeply appreciate it. And now, and we're only getting started, but like, if a earlier stage founder who DMs me on LinkedIn and says, hey, Ali, you and I are both Minnesotans and I live in the Bay Area now. And like, I am about to go raise a seed round and I am thinking about X or Y. Could I quickly pick your brain? I will always respond to that. I might not say, hey, let's do an hour Zoom call on Tuesday, but I'll say, hey, here's my cell. Text me when I'm in transit on Sunday. You and I chat. And look, you're going to have to move your stuff around. Someone is giving you their valuable time, which I would do. And those 15 to 20 minutes can unlock stories, relationships, advice that are priceless. And take that shot. That is the number one thing I would recommend to our listeners.
That's a really awesome way to close this out. And I like the lesson for founders who have already been there, done that, and raised the big round is to pay it forward to the next generation of founders who are just getting off the ground. Well, Ali, thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule to have this conversation. I'm sure it's been a crazy week for you. Congratulations again on the Series B. I'm super excited for what you and your team are building and really appreciate that your CFO has the opportunity to play a small part in the journey. And yeah, looking forward to seeing what you do next. Because yeah, as you said in your announcement, you guys are just getting started, and it's a really exciting time in our space. And I'm glad that we've got you kind of leading the charge when it comes to building that system of record for revenue. So yes, thank you again.
Thank you. It's a deep privilege to be here. I'm honored to be on the show, and we're really excited to be partners between Tabs and Air CFOs. You all bring the best technologies to your clients, and we're also excited to be part of that journey.